Perry Mason is an interesting show. I feel like there isn't that many TV series that try to combine a detective show with a lawyer show much at all. I mean, there are detective shows that sometimes will involve a trial, but those are mostly an addition or serve as a change of scenery kinda. This show goes all in on both, which immediately sets it apart from basically anything else on television. The first season was very messy, most of the time too messy to even enjoy, from weird character work in quite a few places, story being too watered down by too many storylines, and the weird pacing. So I was starting season 2 with quite a few doubts in mind. But I have to say, season 2 is basically a direct upgrade to season 1 on almost every level. Let's start from the main story, so the trial, and I have to immediately say that the trial in season 2 works much better in my opinion. It feels like the most important thing in the show, where in season 1 I felt like a lot of the time that it wasn't the case. It was mostly about everything around it. In this season, the creators decided to basically focus all of their firepower. Most of the time, that's what's talked about. Most of the character stories are either cost or are important to the trial and the investigation, which in my opinion works much better than season 1 because it makes you feel like this trial is the most important thing to everybody in this show and not like something that just is happening. But for it to work well, they had to put it together as well as possible, and in my opinion they did. The trial is definitely the best part of the show. It's super engaging, it's complicated but not too much complicated, put together in a great way that makes you glued to the TV for the entire runtime. And the intrigue is much more interesting too. The mystery is very fun to follow, and the pacing of it when it actually gets going is fantastic. It isn't rushing anything, but never feels too slow. It takes its time with new reveals and just the basic investigating work, but it doesn't get too slow. There were legitimately quite a few days where I just couldn't wait for the next episode because I wanted to know what is going to happen next. And I also feel like the way they approach how Perry and Della decide to go with this trial, so the two accused don't get hanged for what they did, was very interesting. I won't go much into the details, cause I don't want to spoil anything, but it all works in an excellent way. What also adds a lot to this trial is the duo accused. The Gallardo brothers are great. They show up on the screen much less compared to Emily in season 1, but I think it works to their benefit because in their case it adds much more to their unescapable situation. In season 2 they focus much on the fact that they need something to save them. The way their story goes and how they are portrayed, it makes you feel for these guys and you just want them to be okay and honestly just not get executed. The show does a great job of building compassion for them by simply showing how all of it affects them. Let's get to our main character now. Perry in season 1 I felt was a bit of a mixed bag. I felt like while his storylines were good, he never made me super engaged in the show. Well, I have no idea what happened, but Perry Mason is the superstar in season 2 and the best character by far. While he still has a very good storyline in season 2, touching a lot on what happened in season 1 and the consequences of it, building on it, but also I guess he found a fountain of charisma and wit or something between the seasons because seriously, Perry is just so entertaining in season 2. He's not only a super fun character to watch, but there is a lot of layers to him. There is a lot of drama, but there is also a lot of fun of just following Perry's actions for the entire season. Also, the acting is just fantastic. Matthew Rhys did an amazing job portraying Perry this season. There is quite a few moments where I was like, cool, some random side characters are talking, but where Perry at? If anything makes me excited for potential next season, it's definitely seeing Perry Mason on the screen again. But how is the best part of season 1, which is of course Della, doing in season 2? Well, if I have to say the biggest and one of only few downgrades from season 1, it's definitely Della. They had had absolutely zero idea what to do with her in season 2. Her basically only storyline is that she is cheating on her partner. That's basically it, and I don't understand why. You had so much potential with now her being more involved in the trial than before, while still being in law school and trying to hide the fact that she is in fact into girls, but there is nothing, and it's really the biggest disappointment of season 2. Also, a quick side note, is it just me or did they just completely drop the ball on the female characters in season 2? With Della being disappointing, the defendants being male and Alice being gone, there is basically two semi-important female characters in this show, so there isn't much of female presence in season 2. Did it just bother me, or was this actually a thing? I don't know, please tell me. Let's just move on. Let's talk about Paul, who grew to be the second best character in this show. I have to be honest, I don't really remember much about Paul in season 1, but he's doing his best to fill the void from Della being so disappointing. He gets probably the best character storyline in the entire show, where he sees the pressure on him rise and he feels like this case takes more and more from him, mentally and physically, despite the fact he isn't in a front of the jury. He feels like the case is just too big for him. It is super engaging and they build to it in an excellent way. Makes him super likable and you completely understand him, because while Perry and Della mostly fight in court, Della especially, he has to probably do the worst shit so there is anything to this case. And his storyline is also connected to the best female character of the show, who is Clara, where they decided to add much more to her than just a supportive wife, and when she has to go, oh, she will fucking go. And it's a great addition to the show. Moving on from Drake's, let's talk about the rest of the characters in this show, and my first main problem with it. I just can't get into these side characters. I don't know. I had the same problem in season 1, where there were few characters that were great, the rest were just background noise, and in season 2 this problem didn't really change. There's just nothing engaging about any of them, except maybe one or two, but one of them just for one sequence in final episode. But that's it, which not only makes this show drag sometimes, especially in the beginning where you have to set everything up, it makes quite a few scenes feel completely unnecessary. When there is a scene that doesn't involve Perry, Della, Drakes, or the Gallardos, it feels completely skippable and boring, and because there is quite a few scenes like that, for obvious reasons. I mean, you have to at least try building up the side characters, so the intrigue is more interesting. This show feels like it drags. Also, another problem I feel is that the show needs a lot of time to get going. Like, once it gets going, it's super fun to watch, but I would say like the first 2 to 3 episodes are too slow and built for far too long, when they don't really need to. And looking at the fact that this season is just 8 episodes long, it is quite a big problem. The rest of the season feels like it has a spark of greatness and purpose, which the beginning completely lacks, and I don't really know why they decided to make the build up so long. Let's take a small break from the complaining and let's talk about the visual part of the show. What Perry Mason shows is that what we need is more shows set in 30s, because the atmosphere of the show is untouchable. The show looks gorgeous, the sets and the clothing are amazing. Just this part right here adds so much to this show. You just soak all of this war in, the good and the terrible parts of this time in the USA, and it adds a lot to the trial itself because it feels different than every other crime/lawyer drama. I just can't speak highly enough of the vibe this show just gives you. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, let's stop with the praises and finish on the finish, aka the ending. The ending of this season is weird. I don't mean the end of the trial, that is great. The end of the show overall feels like they didn't really know if they wanted to do a full stop ending of everything, or if they wanted to do an ending of the chapter type of deal, so they tried to kinda do both at the same time. Some characters get a complete end of the story type of deals, and some get more of a how will this move on? We shall see. Which makes it kinda weird and it doesn't come together much at all. I feel like if they stuck to one or the other, it would be a fine ending, but in the state that it is, ends up in me having quite mixed feelings on it. But is this show good? Well, it's kind of a mixed bag. When it's good, it's amazing. When it's bad, it's completely boring and missable. But because there is much more of the good than the bad, I would say, yeah, it is a good show. It's not a great show. There is still a lot of room for improvement, but overall, it's mostly a fun show to watch. Simply, I would probably give it a low 7, but I'm interested where this show would go next if it continues. But hey, if you disagree with me, if you want to discuss the show, maybe you liked it and you just want to talk about it, drop some comments.